This is Teresa Hendricks, and I'm coming to you in Jonesboro, Arkansas at the Center for Exceptional Families. And I'm so excited today. This is an interview I've talked to you all about. I've been planning this since August, and I'm here with my hero, Shelby Knight. She is the founder of the center, and today, this is such a treat. She is going to be talking to us about taking care of the caregiver. And this is personal, and it was hard to get her to commit to do this, and I understand why. It's personal. And today, she's going to talk to us, and the reason I wanted to do this, it's hard being a mom. It's hard being a mom of a typical child, and then if you have an atypical child, it's even harder. And I think that as a parent, we don't give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves. We put ourselves last, and I think that that's bad. I think it's very bad for our health. And I want Shelby to tell us her story today. And like I said, this is April. I've been wanting to do this since August, and she's always busy. She's always busy. So I pinned her down today. So I'm just going to jump in. I want her to talk to us just about, to begin, we must begin. I use that quote all the time on here. But Shelby, where do you feel like your story really begins?
Well, I think our story with autism begins in the park in Caregiver Forest, and we were there as a family, my husband and my two children, and my husband had Jeremiah hoisted on his shoulders like a dad will do, and Jeremiah was very, very young. 6 months, 8 months old. He was very young.
Good. That's kind of what I wanted everybody to get a glimpse
of. That age. And of course, we're so proud of our boy. He was so pretty and so perfect. And Ben had him up on his shoulders, and so I asked Ben to stop for just a second. Let me take the picture. I want to get a picture of this. So I took the picture, and I had some ideas because Jeremiah was so cranky as an infant. He was so cranky and didn't want to be held by anyone that wasn't me or his daddy, and very aware when strangers came into the room around us. He was always really, really in panic mode, I guess, really. But so that was kind of in the back of my mind. But the day that I knew was the day in the park. And he was just an infant and he's on his dad's shoulders, and I had them to pause for just a minute so I could take their picture. And when I did, when you put a camera in front of your face, everybody, even the smallest, recognize that. They recognize that, and they want to please you with a smile. They say cheese. You put something in front of your face, and it gets even an infant's attention that it's something different. And so when I put that camera in front of my face, I took their picture, and all he could really focus on was trail. He looked right into the lens, and so he saw that little trail of red dots. Because when you look right into the center of the camera, you take that picture, you get that in your eyeball, and he was trailing off, watching those little red dots fade out. But he was no more aware that I had a camera in front of my face than the other people that were in the park that day who weren't a part of our group. Okay. So, and I knew then, I took his picture, and then they continued to walk away from me, and I knew then that we have a problem. We have a problem, and we've got to figure this out.
Okay. So something you just said, you said that he was a cranky baby. So, as a mom, from the get-go, you had a cranky baby. I had a cranky baby. I had a cranky baby that had colic, we'd call it, and ear infections. So that meant I was up at night holding a cranky baby because if I laid her down, her ears hurt. So immediately, you had a baby that you said he wanted you or his dad. So you began that caretaking early.
Sure.
That he wanted just you.
Sure. Yes. Caretaking and buffering. I was the buffer.
Okay, talk about that.
Yes. Now, let's go back just about 30 seconds prior and say that when I say that Jeremiah was a cranky baby, I mean that he wanted my attention. He wanted to be held by me or his dad, but not constantly just hold me, let me drain all of your life out of you because you've got to hold me all the time. It was that he didn't want to be held by anyone else. Now, he didn't have to be held by us. And here's a little disclaimer that I don't like to share with everybody, but when Jeremiah was 5 months old, we found that I was pregnant with our third. And that was a super surprise, super surprise. And so I was hugely pregnant. And Jeremiah was a little tiny thing. I mean, he wasn't a year old yet. I was very largely pregnant. Our daughter was a toddler, and I loved nothing more than the fact that I was so proud that Jeremiah could sit and watch a full-length animated Disney movie with his sister. I thought I had the best baby in the world. This little boy can sit here and take care of himself. And he wasn't, he was cranky in the sense that if my mother came over or my dad or any of my siblings, he would immediately start climbing up my leg to be with me for me to hold him because there are strangers in the room.
Okay.
So now these are all people that he grew to love, of course, through the years, but that's where his crankiness came from. It wasn't like a colicky kind of cranky.
Okay.
Like people experience the
right.
But he was always very aware of people in his getting into his bubble.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Such a good point right there. And parents who call the center, and so you all out there that have called me here at the center, you will talk about things that your child has done that you know is different.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put your finger on it, but you'll say, often parents will say, my child prefers me.
Yes.
Doesn't, almost suspicious of other family members when they're young. So you feel that way too.
Oh, absolutely.
Which again put more of an energy demand on you being the caretaker.
Oh yes, my goodness.
Because others who might scurry to Grammy, Jeremiah went away from, which put more responsibility on you.
That's right.
You didn't get that break.
That's right. And people would, because Jeremiah was such a beautiful baby.
I've seen the pictures and I remember him.
He was a beautiful baby, and everyone wanted to hold him. And when he cried at his birthday parties, I have pictures of him just bawling at his first birthday party. And he's miserable because there's a room full of people there.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want those people to be there. He would have had a great party if it had just been the 4 or 5 of us. He would have been 4 of us at that time. He would have had a great party. But I insisted that everybody be there. But then that knot in your stomach that we get as mamas, I wanted everybody to be there for his party, but then I was just sick the day of it, knowing that I've invited all these people. He's going to hate every minute of it. He's going to cry the entire time, and they're all going to think that they can make him stop crying. They're all going to think that they can hold him and love him and pat on him, and he will stop crying because they've got the magic touch for the babies. And I knew that wasn't going to be that way. It was going to be miserable. But yet I forced myself to have we're going to have a typical party.
Yeah.
We're going to do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And you thought that eventually someday he would look back at pictures, and if he didn't have the typical party, he'd say, Mama, why didn't you do that for me? Why didn't you do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this was before we knew that he had autism. This was before he ever went to the learning center. This was in the early months. And it was devastating, and I didn't want to treat him any differently. I wanted him to have the same birthday party that Haley had, and Haley had a bunch of kids at her party. So I brought in a bunch of kids and the grandparents and the big cake and made the whole thing, and he just hated it.
Yeah. Yeah. Did he have sensory issues at this point?
No. Jeremiah really didn't develop sensory issues until he was probably in kindergarten or first grade.
Okay.
And the ones that he did develop were cute. I liked him. Yeah. Now, his dad didn't care for it, not at all, because it would draw attention to him. But Jeremiah's favorite thing to do back then was spin. He loved to spin.
Okay.
And then he would also hold his hand way out from his face like this. He would hold it like this, and he would flick his finger, and then he would quickly draw it in, and then pull it back like this, and then quickly draw it in.
Yeah.
And so his dad would tell him, and he broke him from that. And and I'm fussing and fighting about the whole thing because I think he needs that self-stimulation. He needs that.
Yeah.
But Ben broke him from that by saying, put your hands down. Yeah. And then he would stop it. He would get mad, but he would do it. So now it's not an issue. And if he does that, he does it in the dark of night in his room, and we don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's the way we like it.
But in Ben's mind, he was thinking he didn't want people staring at
That's
him
right.
or drawing
That's
negative attention.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that was his whole focus of that. Ben's comments weren't to change Jeremiah's autism at all. It was just to make him less seen, you know, and he didn't want the negative attention drawn to him. Certainly he loves him and thought he was a beautiful boy just like I did, but he just didn't want that negative attention or the stares from people.
And it's so hard in the beginning. And Jeremiah's 31.
I believe so.
A mom of 3.
I never know with my kids.
Well, and 31 years ago, it was so new.
Oh, yes.
And not knowing what you were dealing with.
Right. Yes.
So that at that time, you weren't thinking of yourself as parent, caregiver, or long-term caregiver parent. You were just thinking, he's baby 2, and baby 2 is going to eventually be like baby 1. Yeah. But then again, baby 1 was a girl, baby 2 is a boy.
Yeah.
And how often you hear, he's the boy.
Oh, my.
He's the boy. He's the boy. And at that time, he was the baby.
Yes.
He's the baby. He's the boy.
Yes.
So you hear those things. So fast forward just a little bit. You've told me the story about getting the diagnosis. And you were sitting in front of the panel of people. And you told me you were watching the clock.
Oh, yes.
Would you care to share that with parents?
If I can. It's been a long time since I've shared that. A long time. And I guess I kind of have locked that away a little bit. But we had searched locally for help and found the Learning Center. And so Jeremiah started to the Learning Center before he could walk. Thankfully, there was a half door in the classrooms, and I would drive up and drop him off at a half door, and he couldn't get to me. So I would put him over that doorway, and then he would spend his time there. But that was before our official diagnosis, when we just had a feeling that there was issues with Jeremiah, and so he was placed there, and so they could work on speech and OT and PT and those sorts of things. But our official diagnosis was a good day. Started out a good day because we are finally going to put it to rest. Now, when we first started hearing about it could be something called autism, the public library here in Jonesboro had one book, and it was Leo Kanner's book, The Refrigerator Mother.
One book.
One book.
One book.
Yeah. Didn't have the World Wide Web. So we had one book. So I took him to his pediatrician locally, and I said, what can you tell me about autism? We're kind of thinking that that's our issue. And he said, well, I'm sure that it isn't. You're very emotional. Your pregnancy state, you're very emotional. He's a boy. You've got this other toddler. And I'm sure it isn't, but let me get you what I have. So he disappeared around the corner and came back with literally a photocopy of a page out of Webster's dictionary with the definition of the word autism. And he highlighted it for me. So he gave me that one sheet of paper, and I left with that. And then it began to sink in at that moment that I'm by myself.
Yeah.
I'm by myself. And so we continue with the Learning Center. That was wonderful, and a life-saving group. And it was I don't think I would have survived had it not been for those folks to help me, because they help us not only as a little tiny guy that's got issues, but as a family as well.
So this is a really good moment to talk about, as a caregiver, you need a support team. You need a support system. Had a parent call the center yesterday. COVID has made everything hard and different. But this was a mom at home with a preschooler, not going anywhere, with no supports. And my advice was, you need a support group. You need to look at a preschool because you've got to have some support.
Yes.
And because you're describing resources, people are lifelines.
Yes. Yes. And they really were for us, because I had no one else. I mean, no one in our family had autism. Yeah. And so I had no one else that I could turn to for help. So the Learning Center was amazing to us, to help us get a level of care for him, but then also provide something to our family as well. And whether that's just a pat on the back for me, just a pat on the back. I mean, I was literally made of glass in those days. And just a pat on the back, an affirmation that we recognize that you're trying.
Yeah.
You know, just that. But the experience at Dennis Developmental was difficult, even though we were anxious to get there and just get a definitive. Let's just get a definitive and know what we're talking about and know how to help him. And when we came into the room, the waiting area was filled with families who had kids in helmets, kids who were crying and upset and climbing the walls with mama, and it was just a really stressful environment, real stressful at that time. But once we got situated, I began to look around at the kiddos, and I began to kind of, you know, judge that one against mine. And he looks pretty good compared to that. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have those issues. Jeremiah is rolling his little Thomas Tank Engine. He's rolling it across the table. This little boy has his flipped upside down, and he is spinning the wheels and watching the wheels go. And this little guy's playing at the sand table, and all he's trying to do is take it and fling it. He just wants to fling it. Yeah. And so when Jeremiah came to it, he's pushing Thomas through it like a train would go through it. So I think I have a genius. Number one, we don't have autism. Number two, we're probably a genius. Yeah. So yeah. I was very pleased at that. But then they call our names. We go back into this exam room. They put us behind a mirror so that Jeremiah cannot see us. Okay. So he's at a bean-shaped table. And they are putting toys in front of him, giving him a minute, then taking that toy away and judging his response and making all kinds of notes. Okay, so that person's over there behind that mirror doing that. Then me and my husband are over here in this tiny room watching this unfold. So this panic started right here, this panic. And the person that's with us is asking us very direct questions. Does he do that at home? What happens when you do this? And I'm answering them, but I'm absolutely lying, because I know that if I don't, they're going to say he's got autism. Oh, yeah. So I didn't want them to do that. Once I got there, I didn't want that. Yeah. But my husband was telling them the truth. How dare him? He was telling everybody the truth. And I was pinching his leg, and I was bumping his elbow, and I was doing all the things to make him stop talking. Yeah. And then he didn't. But we still felt pretty good. Yeah. We felt pretty good because we didn't have the issues that these kiddos out front had. We had a beautiful boy who was, had a couple little things, but that's all. So we left there and went and had a nice meal out and celebrated. Yeah. Yeah. We were celebrating that we were not autistic. And then we came back at 2:30 and they put us in a room and they had Ben and Shelby Knight on this side with a little boy in red corduroy overalls and a white turtleneck shirt and little tiny white Reeboks. Oh. Precious. And he was playing with this Thomas the Tank Engine in the floor right here between the two of our chairs. And they started on one end of the table and they introduced themselves. And I knew that it was going to be bad because it was like gentle news. He can do this. This one said he can do that. This one says he can, but, and then as they went down the line, the information got a little bit worse with each one. So I just stopped listening, and I just focused on the clock that was above their heads on the wall, the clock. And when they got to 2:33 p.m., they said he has autism. And it was devastating. Now, one of the folks in the line said, it's okay for you to grieve. You've suffered a loss today. This is a loss. It's devastating to you as a family, but please just treat it as a loss and go ahead and grieve for your child. And I know this is terrible and we're recording this, but I was trying to think of the ways that I could climb across that table and hurt her. Yeah. And I wanted her to stop talking. because my baby was still here. I did not lose my baby. He's still here. And I was very upset by that. But we left. That was October the 16th, 1992 at 2:33 p.m. And that's what they said. And so we gathered him up and left. And they gave us very much, it was a very different situation than my local pediatrician who gave me one sheet of paper. These folks gave me this much paper.
Oh, wow.
And everything that was ever documented on the word autism, they gave that to me to read. So when we put him in the car seat to bring him home, and I remember buckling him in and getting him secure, and I looked him in the face, and he was just precious. Not quite two. He was just not quite two. Looked him in the face, and I could see the word autism written across his forehead. And it changed everything. And what she had said didn't resonate with me for years and years. But what she had said was actually true, because we did, in that moment, at 2:33 p.m. on October 16, 1992, lose that baby. That we no longer had that little boy who was going to be a Cub Scout and a baseball player like his daddy. We didn't have that baby anymore. Yeah. And they gave us this baby who has autism. So even though he looked the same and was dressed the same, it was not the boy that we brought into them.
Right.
And it was devastating.
So there's, I know it's the death of the dream.
Yes.
That you have of that child.
Yes.
And then you develop a new dream for the child that you have. And that's how it has been explained to me. And that's such a hard concept to accept, because you're right. And the first time I heard that analogy was a parent was explaining to me what the doctors had told her about her child who had been in a car accident with a traumatic brain injury. And they said, the hopes and the dreams that you had for your son, you have to grieve that, because he will never be, and at that time, this child was a very strong athlete.
Yes.
And, your child is going to have to learn to crawl and walk, and will always walk. Hopefully will walk.
Yes.
And so you have to let that dream go and have a new dream.
Yes.
So as a parent, and again, our topic is taking care of the caregiver. In those days when you're getting a diagnosis, how can we as a community, as a friend, as a family member, how do we support a parent? How do we help care for that caregiver?
I think that what I needed at that time was someone to listen to me. Just someone to talk to me and help me, not promise me anything. Don't promise to babysit, or don't promise to invest your time if you don't intend to. But just to talk to me and to give me assurance that we're going to be okay. I needed that. I needed that regularly. And I did receive that while he was at the Learning Center. I felt like I received that from those folks there. But it was traumatic, to say the least. And one of the things that really drove it home for us was that while the folks at Dennis Developmental, someone made the comment that this is a death of this, this, you can grieve this, you've suffered a loss. And then one of our neighbors in our little community that we lived in sent us a bouquet of flowers.
Oh.
And it was a sweet gesture, because she knew my heart was broken. It was a sweet gesture, but it was also affirmation. I've suffered a loss.
Yeah.
And I've received flowers because I've suffered a loss.
Wow.
And so that's how I associated those two things.
Yeah.
One of the things about it was that I did feel alone. I felt alone because our pediatrician had one sheet of paper. Dennis Developmental gave us a stack and said, call us if you need anything. And I felt alone. And I felt like when I got in the car with those papers on my lap, and it was 2.5 hours to get back to Jonesboro, I said to myself, okay, you're going to be a good mom. You're going to be a good mom, and you're going to learn all you can about this disability. Start on page 1. And I didn't make it to the bottom of page 1. and I set it aside. And I said, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to give it over. I'm not ready to give this over. And I set it in the floorboard. And then when we got home, I put it on the top of the filing cabinet. And I'd look at it every now and then as a complete failure of my ability to understand or care about his autism. I looked at that giant stack of resources that I needed to look through, and I could not bring myself to do it. Because it's if you take it off the filing cabinet, if you look at a single page of that, you are confirming what they say.
Yeah.
And I could not do it. I wouldn't do it. And finally, at some point, I took that entire stack and put it in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, and that's where it stayed. I just couldn't do it.
And I think that's probably a very human reaction.
Mm-hmm.
I do. And particularly when it comes to our children. I think that we can only absorb so much at a time.
Yes.
And that's part of, I think that's part of the grieving process.
I do too.
And
now I do.
Yeah. And I think another thing, when they said, read all this and if you have questions, call, I think that's the worst thing to say to somebody sometimes. Because initially, you don't even know what to ask.
Right.
Like, I don't even know enough to ask a question. You know? And so that can be difficult.
And that had to be their response, though. Because looking back on it now, they had to do that. It's ripping off a Band-Aid. It's saying, this is your situation now. Now you're going to have to embrace it.
Yes.
And so I did call them. I mean, you know, I called them like 2 days later. I called them.
I'm sure you did.
And their response was very casual with me. But you know, my world's on fire, and you're not reacting to the fact that my world is on fire.
Yeah.
And so but they have to do that. They have to, because you cannot expect an organization like Dennis Developmental to take those after calls from mamas all day long, because they've got children that they've got to see. They've got addresses with other families, and you're going to have to go out and find your help. You're going to have to go and do that. And so I was really upset and angry at the time, but after a while it made good sense to me.
Yeah. And what is interesting is, and you and I have talked about this so many times, there are parents who put it in the bottom drawer and never open it again. And then there are Shelby Knights who go forth and form an organization who change the world.
Well, and that was an accident. I mean, that was just an accident. That was never my plan. I mean, I intended to be a stay-at-home mom. That's all I ever wanted to do, because that's what my mother did. And I emulated everything about my mother, and that's what I wanted to do, was be like her. So that was our plan, and I was going to stay at home. I was working up until our third was born, and then I stayed with it for probably about 3 months, maybe 4 months, and I just couldn't do it. I could not take my children to even the very best sitter in the world that we had at the time. I just couldn't do it. Yeah. And be in an office all day and then not take care of my kiddos. And so I did. I left to be a stay-at-home mom, and that worked out great until my youngest was in the 7th grade. And then I received a call from a local waiver provider here in Jonesboro that wanted someone to come in and work 2 days a week and just organize a resource library, maybe start a parent support group or something like that. And my husband said, it'll be good for you. I think you should. It'll get you out of the house, and it'll be good for you. You should do it. And I did it, and I loved it. Oh my goodness, because it connected me to other families. It connected me to other mamas who were just like me. And I made so many mistakes with Jeremiah when he was little in public school, so many mistakes. And so I could share with others the mistakes that I made, and just have them write that down so that you do not make the mistakes that I made. Don't do it like this. Do it like this instead, because learn from me. And because I really messed it up lots of times when he was in elementary school, but even into junior high maybe. But it was wonderful to have a job to go to 2 days a week. My kids didn't know I was employed, because I would take them to school, and then I would work until 2:30 and then go get in the pickup line. So they didn't even they didn't miss a beat. Supper was on the table, and they didn't miss a beat. Everything was fine. But then after 3 years, I think it was about 3 years of that, my director retired and handed me the program.
So did you feel, in a way, this was a new outlet for you as even a way to care for, initially for Jeremiah, but in a way, was it caring for yourself too?
I think so, because I had a lot of pent up emotion, questions, anger, excitement, a lot of frustration about surrounding the services available, the level of care that I can give, the level of care I think his dad gives. I mean, all these things, the interactions from other families, but I only had myself. I kept that internally because I had no one else to share that with.
Right.
But then once I started to work for the waiver agency, and I was taking phone calls from families and conducting support groups with families, they felt the same way. They felt completely isolated and alone.
Yes.
And so when you're all in the room together, I mean, you're literally going around the room introducing yourselves. I could not wait for it to come back around to me, so I could talk about, this is my thing, this is my issue tonight, and it was very therapeutic for all of us.
Yeah.
I think now it's less personal because we gather on Zoom, and it's less personal.
Yeah.
But I love those days. I loved it.
Yeah.
I still am connected to those families that we held those initial support group meetings with downtown. I'm still connected to several of those families, and I treasure that friendship.
And so many people don't know that you are involved with so many organizations, and you are known in the world, that in the pond that we swim in, as far as persons with disabilities. I will get phone calls here, since I'm kind of manning the office while you're doing all the important administrative things, and we get calls from DHS and DCFS and all these different offices, and from other states, Georgia, Alabama, places calling and saying, we've heard of Shelby Knight, and she helps families, and we have families who need help. Can she give us a call? Can you talk to her for us and just give this family some direction? They need help. And I was amazed. I am still amazed at the number of calls that we get, and families that need help, that are just desperate, that are just desperate for somebody to talk to, that feel alone and overwhelmed. And often when I first start talking to them, they're angry.
Yes.
And so angry. And sometimes they don't even know who they're angry with.
Right.
And they're just frustrated with the situation. And by the time we get through talking, usually they feel better. And they almost always end the conversation with, thank you for listening to me. Just thank you for listening to me. And I think that caring for the caregiver, people just need somebody to listen to them. And during COVID, when everybody's bottled up at home, I think, oh my goodness, there are so many lonely people in the world. If we could just connect everybody to hear, and simple things, like I've told so many people, I said, can you just go and shut yourself in the bathroom and take a bath? And I know that sounds silly, but oh my goodness, I'm a bath person. And I remember taking a bath and my kids being little and sticking their fingers under the door, wanting in the bathroom with me, but sometimes. So what are some things that helped you? Just could you tell us some little things and then big things that when you just felt the world was caving in on you?
Well, the little things, and I kind of categorize that into two groups for me, because it was the little things then and the little things now.
Okay. And that's so good, because you have an adult child.
Yes,
now.
That's right. It's very different. Very different. The little things then, Jeremiah did not learn how to turn a doorknob until he was about 6.
Okay.
He literally did not know to do that until he was about 6. So the only safe room in our house was our bathroom. We had a bath and a half in our starter home, bath and a half. So the only respite that I had was that bathroom. And so we had a bedtime ritual with our children, and it was to tuck them in, read a book, say your prayers, and then they go to sleep. There was no TV. I don't believe in that TV in the bedroom thing. Don't call me on that later. But that was our ritual. And we read a book, quiet evening, go to bed. But with Jeremiah, it was very difficult. So he did not transition to the bed. He just couldn't do it. He would bounce the walls in the living room when he knew it was bedtime. When baths were being given, he would begin to bounce across the walls and run, and it was very chaotic. So after I got him bathed and ready for bed in his pajamas, he didn't get the bedtime story. He didn't get that. He was put in his bed by his dad. And so once I got the bath done, I handed him off to his dad. Then I got into the shower so that I could not hear the wailing and the screaming. And that's how I did it. That was the only respite that I had away from that at that time.
Yeah.
Now, years later, I understand how desperate Jeremiah was for he wanted a normal bedtime experience like the girls were. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
And so he would stand at his doorway and try and move that doorknob. He would hold it and he would try to make it move. He wasn't sure how to do it. Make it move. And he would scream at me, Sadie Bird, Sadie Bird, Sadie Bird. And he was just screaming. And I never knew what that meant. But then years later, it came to me. He sang, say the prayer, say the prayer, say the prayer.
Oh.
So in my mind, years later, I realized that what he wanted from us was the same bedtime ritual that the girls had. I need you to come in here and read me a book and say your prayers with me.
Oh.
And then we're going to do our best to go to sleep. He wanted the same transition that they had. And I just didn't know it at the time because I was I was the buffer for Jeremiah. I was the buffer between him and all bad things.
Yeah.
And he considered his dad a bad thing because Ben was going to be the enforcer.
Yeah.
And you're going to do these things, and you're going to stop flicking your hands, and you're going to go to bed like you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't a pleasant experience. So my respite at that time was a long shower.
Yeah.
A long shower, put a radio in there, and try and block out the sound that's coming from his room, which was directly across the hall from our little bathroom.
Yeah.
So that was my only respite at that time. That and trips to Walmart. I would find a reason to go to Walmart. My neighbors back in the day commented that they knew when it was almost time for Ben to come home without looking at the clock because my little minivan's motor would be running. And then he would come in from work and he would pull into his parking spot and I'd be backing out of mine.
Yeah.
Because I've got to go. And we were a young couple with no money. I can't go anywhere and spend anything. I'm not going on a trip. I'm going to Walmart.
Yeah.
And I'm going to walk all the aisles into Walmart because that just is going to help me relieve this.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So any alone time, that was one of the things that I could do when he was younger. Back then was just alone time. And it wasn't alone time sitting on the deck and enjoying a book. It was just being physically and mentally alone. It's all I had. There was no other way for me. I can't recall a time that there was any other way than that.
And when you were alone, were you just processing everything that had happened with him, or was it just trying to just think of nothing?
Oh, I don't think I've had a moment since Jeremiah's diagnosis that I've had thought of nothing.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't know how to do that.
See, that and that's something else
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about. And then I think, and this is thinking, I think that when you have multiple children, when you have typicals and atypical, I think there is that guilt perhaps that comes, and this is, I've had persons with disability in my family, that parents feel because the atypical takes so much time that there's the guilt that you're not getting to spend more time with your typicals.
Of course.
And
Yes.
the sacrifices that they have to make.
Yes, that's right. And there are always those sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you're in such a state of shock, and that shock, just like it is when you're grieving the permanent death of someone, that shock and grief lasts for years.
Yes.
I mean, you just don't dig in your heels and start working toward a cure or a plan or something, you grieve.
Yes.
And so I asked my husband, I don't get emotional about it, but I asked my husband a couple years ago about our life when Jeremiah was little, and I said, I don't remember if I cooked. And I said, did I cook for us? What did we do for supper? And he said, my husband is a wonderful person, and he said, Shelby, you didn't cook. He said, you made what this one wanted for supper and what that one wanted and what that one needed. And you did that. And then you and I just ate whatever we could off of, whatever was prepared. Yeah. But I did not, I wanted to be like my mother and make that meal with the meat and 3 vegetables and the dessert and tea. I wanted that. But then once we received a diagnosis, that was just gone. Yeah. It was never going to be that way. And our family was never going to sit at a table and eat all together in a pleasant meal. It wasn't going to happen. Yeah.
Well, and I didn't get a Kleenex. I
oh
should
my
know
gosh,
we were going to do this.
I know. I didn't think about it.
But that's real. We're real here.
Yeah.
But we have to be real because there are people who need this so much. But you all survived. Everybody's healthy.
We did.
Everybody ate.
Yep.
But these are things that other parents who are living it right now need to know you made it to the other side. Mm-hmm. Because there are people right now watching this right there that's going to be watching this as soon as we post it that are not sure that they're going to make it to the other side.
Right.
Because you had days you weren't sure you were going to make it to the other side.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And so back then, you had your trips to Walmart and showers. Mm-hmm. But now that Jeremiah can take care of himself in so many ways, has his own business, and knows things to do to make himself happy.
Yes.
So now what do you do when you have days you feel overwhelmed?
It's really strange. Today, I might take a day trip. I might leave by myself and just take a day trip and be alone with my thoughts. Now, always, I think since his diagnosis, my thoughts are typically of him. Mm-hmm. And what can I do? What should I have done? I mean, my thought this morning when I woke up out of the bed, before I even reached for my phone, was, what about Jeremiah's dreams? What about what he wants to do with his life? Do I even have any idea what Jeremiah wants to do with his life? And I don't. And someday I'm going to think that it's okay that I don't know. Someday I'm going to think it's okay that I didn't know what he was doing with his life. But it bothered me this morning. I got up and just thought about it. But I feel that I can take a drive and have a day trip. Mm-hmm. It's very precarious because Jeremiah, I do think he's 31. Now that I've thought about it, I think he's 31. I do think he is. But we're at an age now where we like to travel. My husband and I like to travel and do things. Mm-hmm. So Jeremiah has Medicaid waiver services, and up before the pandemic, we could have someone come in, and his waiver person would come in and stay with him so that we could travel and take a trip or something for a little bit. Because, and I just learned not long ago that you really have to go back and nurture those relationships. Even though my husband is a wonderful person, I didn't nurture that relationship like I was, because I'm constantly focused on Jeremiah's well-being. I have to do this. This job is not complete. And while my girls have left the nest and are employed or they have beautiful full lives themselves, he's still waiting for his to begin. So I've got to help him get ready to leave the nest. Right. So I'm still in that mindset of doing that. But then I also have a husband of 38 years that expects and needs me to be a companion.
Right.
So I've got to be able to shift. Now, I had lunch with a dear friend recently in Paragould who's kind of in the same situation that I am with the child with autism. And when I left her, I said, we fussed all through lunch about our personal issues and our families and kind of had our moment. And then when I left her, I said, just keep your plate spinning.
Aw,
because that's
I
what we
love
feel
that.
like we're
I
doing.
love that.
And she had that analogy for herself, because here's the husband over here, and here's the son over here, and here's this person over here in the family that's bugging them, and you know they've got all that too.
Yeah.
So and that's kind of what I do, is you just keep it all spinning and make it work.
Yeah.
But short term was when he was younger. That's what I did. Short term now, day trips for me. If I'm at home, and I have been working from home in the pandemic, and that's harder, because even though I've got an office in my home that I need to be at 8 hours a day, I really beat myself up if I'm not sitting at that desk getting that work done. I felt like it would be comfortable for me, because it gives him comfort knowing that I'm there in this trying time. He doesn't understand the pandemic. He's afraid it's going to knock on our door and hurt us. And so he was very comforted by the idea that I was still at home.
Yes.
So, but now I'm feeling like I'm coming back to the office soon, and how's he going to take that? How's he going to react to that?
Yeah. So it's part of being that caregiver. You give so much care to your child that there's not a lot of care left to give to yourself.
That's right.
Because I love your analogy of the spinning plates. Those plates you've still named husband,
Yes,
other children,
yes,
other family members. We're back to that topic. Self
yes.
gets left out.
You get left out.
Just absolutely gets left out, and you can't do that. But I love that, when Jeremiah was the little boy in the bedroom who couldn't express his needs, and you were so overwhelmed, you were in the shower for your escape. But now Jeremiah's very verbal.
Yes.
Can tell you what he wants and what he needs.
Yes.
You have the waiver services. You and Ben can take some trips now. You can nurture the marriage again. Your girls have grown up beautifully. They have full, wonderful lives. You have grands that you can love on and branch out your life, and they give so much back. So you've made it to the other side.
I feel like we have. I feel like it'll be complete when I can move Jeremiah out of my house.
So that's another good point to bring up. To really take care of you, you have to really still have a complete plan.
Yes.
For him.
Yes.
And I think I hear that all the time in the voices of the parents who call. As a parent, both of my children are grown and, as I say, have flown. One is married with a family. One is still single. And I know I worry about both, but I do think maybe I worry more about my daughter that is single, because she is single. And I worry, she lives alone. So I watch way too many murder mysteries. So I think, is she okay home alone, or is somebody going to break in the house and kill her? And at least the married daughter, there is somebody else there at midnight to know she's not being murdered.
Right.
So I think as parents, we do worry about how our children going to be. And so there's a part of us that we don't rest.
Yes, that's right.
Until we feel there's some closure.
That's right.
But we all know anything can happen at any time and change everything. But we do worry about those things. So as a caregiver, caring for yourself, part of your stress comes from feeling you don't have all those plans completed.
Oh yes, yes. Because if you go back in time to the time when my daughters were playing basketball, and here Jeremiah hated to be in the gym. He hated the sound of the whistle. He hated the sound of the screeching sneakers on the gym floor. He hated all of that, but he had to go because we both want to see our daughters succeed on the court. We want to see that. We want to be a part of that. He had to go with us. In the same way we made him do those things, we still provided, I feel, something that was completely separate from them. He had a parallel experience, having been in Shelby as parents, parallel, but it was not at all the same.
Right.
And it couldn't be. Now, And the buffering and the pain from that I'm probably never going to be able to let that go. I just don't know how to let that go. I think that as it's, and we're past time, make a note of that for sure. We are past time for the boy to move out, because that should have happened a long time ago. Learn from my mistake, because it is a mistake. And I feel that my mental health and Jeremiah's well-being would have been better served had I been able to make that transition when he was younger.
Really? Do you think that?
I do believe that, yes. I do believe that.
We haven't really talked about that very much.
I do. Now that I'm older and he is very settled in a room that he's occupied since 1998. He's very settled in that room. He knows where everything is in that room. And to me, that's not a growing experience. He should not be there. He should be challenged every day to do something different and to learn and grow. And he's not being challenged, certainly not being challenged in a pandemic. We haven't had waiver services in nearly 2 years.
Pandemic's awful.
So I feel very aware of to me, it's a failure as a parent that he doesn't live somewhere else. It's a failure as a parent, because I think that he should, and he should experience a different lifestyle. Whether that is sharing a kitchen or a bathroom or having to clean his own bathroom mirror, whatever that is, he's missing out on it because he lives at home with us. Now, Jeremiah's perfectly capable, dresses himself, showers, shaves, shampoos. He can clean his room. He hates to do it. Empties his own trash, and he can vacuum and those he does his own laundry. So he's perfectly capable.
Right.
But I have never felt that there was any program or any group housing that would meet my needs as a parent. Now, looking back on that, I can say that my oldest daughter's first apartment did not meet my needs as a parent. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I didn't feel she was safe either.
Yeah.
But looking back on that, I let her do it.
Yeah.
And I should have let Jeremiah do it when he was 21. I should have moved him out. It may not have been an awesome experience. The couch might need to be cleaned. The carpets might have been dirty. The kitchen might have had folding chairs and a card table. I should have let him do it. Yeah. And then we'd be past that.
Yeah.
And I think, Teresa, I really, really want to believe with my whole heart that once we transition Jeremiah from our home into a different setting for him, I really think a lot of my stressors will leave. Now, parents that have done it, if you want to call me and tell me otherwise, I'll accept that call. I will accept that call. But I feel that once I can make this move, some of this will go away. And the daily buffering is hard on you. And I feel that some of that will go away if he's in a good environment.
I can see that. Well, Jonesboro community, this is something we need. We need more housing. We need more programs for our adults.
We need options.
For our high-functioning adults. That's what we need.
Yes.
Folks, we got to get on it.
Yes.
We have to get on it.
And I think it's very sad that in so many ways the housing for our adults with disabilities really pigeonholes them into, you can live in this apartment, you can be independent, but to do that, you're going to have to spend 8 hours a day in a day program.
Right.
And Jeremiah does not want to go to a day program. He tried that.
Right.
And he didn't like it.
Right.
So he doesn't want to do that. But if he doesn't want to go to a day program, then he's going to have to get employment for 4 hours a day. No one's going to hire Jeremiah.
Right.
You're not sure what you're going to get. And we painted a beautiful picture, Teresa and I, of Jeremiah's abilities, and he is a wonderful guy, but he can lash out at you if he feels like something's not in his favor or you're not listening to him. He can lash out at you, and whether that be physical, typically it's physical. So he bites. He still bites when he needs to, and so there's that. But I do feel, I know that's probably not true, but I do feel that if I could just move him out, he would have a better life than he has with us. That's a terrible thing to say.
No, it's not. That's real. But we need to get some realtors out there. I know some. You know who you are. You're young. You're innovative. You can do this. Then we need some other partners that can join together and support this, and we can get it going.
And you know, it's not about housing just for adults with disabilities. I mean, I really want Jeremiah to live in something that is supported and secure, but I also want him to have typical neighbors who will say to him, you can't put that on the ground like that. You can't throw that out like that. You got to put that in the trash can. People that will hold him accountable into being an independent citizen. And I think that keeping him at home like this has really, I have failed him as a parent. I've never felt ready to move him out, and now I'm kind of past ready to move him out. But move him out to what? At this point, move him out to what is kind of where I'm at.
Well, we're gonna work on that.
I'm ready. I'm ready to sign the papers.
I think I know some people who can help us.
Golly.
Well, thank you, Shelby. I could go on forever, but these things are hard to upload. I'm telling you. The longer, the harder. But hadn't this been great?
Well, it's good for me. I typically don't. I've just kind of quit talking about it.
It's been months since August.
Well, it's been
We're
years.
April.
It's been years since I've declined invitations to speak about our early days with Jeremiah, not because it's so painful, but because I feel like I've lost that edge, I've lost that spark to do that, and my mindset has shifted from the diagnosis days into get this boy out of my house. I'm ready to get this boy out of my house, and I'm ready to learn how to take care of me again, and focus back on those original relationships, me and my husband, and just enjoying life at this point. I'm ready to enjoy the simpler, quieter things.
And see, that's what parents need to hear, that it's okay to want those things, and that you will get to that place where you're not just surviving the day.
Oh, yes.
That you can start thinking about the future.
Yes.
So thank you, Shelby.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you all for listening. And this is going to be, I'm going to have some Facebook teasers, and then it's going to be on our website. So visit us. Stop by the center. We're going to be opening soon. We've been closed for COVID, but call us, come see us, visit our Facebook page, our web page, YouTube. We're everywhere. We're going to be so tech savvy. So just come see us.